Joining us right now, we spoke yesterday about Scott Pruitt, the administrator of the EPA, who was under fire quite a bit from the folks in the swamp, drumming up, in my opinion, some fake, phony controversies and scandals that really amount to nothing in this town, trying to get him out of work as the administrator of the EPA. And I told you yesterday that it's because he's been so effective, because he's actually been probably the most loyal in the Trump administration to carry out the president's promises with regard to regulation, specifically at the EPA within the realm of the environmental standards that had been just out of control under the Obama administration. Well, the latest on that story is the president made it known that he is squarely behind his cabinet secretary, behind his administrator at the EPA. He had Raj Shah, spokesperson at the White House, come out and say that the president supports Scott Pruitt 100% and he's his man. Now, we've seen in this White House that doesn't necessarily always mean that it'll be the story tomorrow, but as of now, Trump is standing behind Pruitt, and as well he should, and that's a good story. Now, what's the latest? The real story is what Scott Pruitt is doing with regard to environmental standards and regulations in this country and how it's going to benefit our economy and our industries. Marlo Lewis is a senior fellow at the Competitive Enterprise Institute, and we saw today from the EPA, Marlo Lewis, a development that many of us have been waiting for from this EPA after the Obama administration. It had to do with the automotive industry. What did they do with what's called CAFE standards?
Well, what they did today, Larry, is they repealed a regulation called the final midterm evaluation, which the Obama administration did of the fuel economy standards that they adopted way back in 2012, but in a very unprecedented way, they extended them all the way out to 2025, as if somehow the bureaucrats in Washington and in Sacramento, because California has a role in this, thanks to the Obama administration, have the foresight in order to basically tell auto engineers what kinds of cars should be built more than a decade into the future. And so, what Mr. Pruitt did today was make a determination that the Obama administration's determination was based on overly optimistic assumptions about technology, about consumer acceptance, about cost, and so the Obama administration determination was swept away, and it was swept away as inappropriate because Mr. Pruitt believes, and I think this is absolutely correct, that even if you think fuel economy standards are a good idea, these were way too stringent, would cost the auto industry too much, would cost consumers too much, and so you would actually see a decline in auto sales and hence employment in the auto industry, which would then have ripple effects through the economy. So they're going to have a whole brand new rulemaking with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to revise the standards for the last 3 years of this period, 2022 to 2025.
And by the way, the standard for those 3 years, 2022 and through 2025, my understanding is would have forced car makers to bring the fuel economy up to 50 miles per gallon. That's wholly unrealistic, isn't it?
Well, yes. In fact, the target was 54.5 miles to the gallon. Now, because automakers would be able to use some credits that they had banked, as it's termed, from overcompliance with earlier years and for some other technical reasons, in practice it might be, as you say, closer to 50, but it still amounted to a doubling of fuel economy, average fuel economy standard, over and above the Obama era. And what the Obama administration assumed was that somehow all of this could be achieved without exotic new technologies, that very little electrification of the auto fleet would be required. And that's part of the unrealistic assumptions that the Pruitt EPA has rejected, and based largely on what the Auto Alliance and the Global Auto Alliance. I'm maybe getting the name of that wrong, but there are two major auto industry coalitions, but also the National Auto Dealers Association and various separate auto companies, including Toyota. They all said basically the only way we can meet these standards is if a high percentage of our vehicles, Mercedes-Benz, it was 25%, would have to be all electric, battery-powered vehicles. And right now, I think it's something like only 1% of auto sales, annual auto sales, are pure battery electric vehicles. And so, all told, I think it's something like only 5% of vehicles sold in 2017 would comply with these 2025 standards. So this was very unrealistic. And the thing is that people can make their own choices, based on how much more money they're willing to spend to get a more fuel-efficient vehicle versus how much money they would be saving at the pump. According to several estimates that are pretty reliable, these standards would add anywhere from $3,000 to $7,000 to the cost on average, of a new vehicle in 2025. That means you're pricing a whole bunch of people, millions of people who are lower income, out of the market for new motor vehicles. Many of them would no longer qualify for car loans, which are based. Your eligibility for a car loan is based on your income in relation to the debt that you have to pay off. So the more expensive the car, the bigger the debt, and so millions of people could simply be denied credit because they couldn't afford to make the payments, or they wouldn't be reliable enough, for the lending company.
Yeah.
And so the other problem is that, another big problem for consumers is that even though advanced technologies are making it feasible to make cars more fuel efficient, one of the basic strategies that is still in play here is reducing the weight of a motor vehicle. The lighter the car, the more miles to a gallon you can get. But a lighter car has less mass to absorb collision forces, and so it is less safe in a crash. That's not to say that vehicles aren't getting safer. They are, but that's because of new technologies like rear-view cameras and automatic braking. But if you take any high-tech vehicle and you add weight to it, you make it even safer. And so these very stringent standards make it difficult for people to get all the safety they would otherwise be able to buy.
It is a good decision on so many levels. And by the way, a great move by Scott Pruitt, not hiding behind his desk, not hiding in his office, not cowering in the corner afraid of the swamp, but going right out there while he's under fire and saying, no, we're going about the business of the American people and we're doing what the president promised. Thank you for joining us. Marlo Lewis, Senior Fellow at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Really good stuff there. Really good stuff.